All right, everyone, you are not going to want to miss out on the chance of owning this amazing Batgirls #1 Dan Mora exclusive variant brought to you by none other than GlassCabinetHobbies.com. Just amazing, beautiful work on this one. Pre-sales are live right now. The release date is December 14th. You could get your copy for $14.99. Just head over to GlassCabinetHobbies.com. Their link is in the description below. If you're also in the market for awesome CGC graded comics and other exclusive covers, definitely check out their website as well, and think about joining and signing up for their newsletter. And you can also subscribe and save off of their monthly Comic Insider subscription program, where you can get up to 20% off. What is going on, everyone? Chris with Journals, Comics, and Pop Culture. Today we have a hot topic of discussion. We are asking the question, what is the real first appearance of Spider-Man 2099, aka Miguel O'Hara? This has been a hot topic of discussion over the last week, ever since we got that sneak peek to Across the Spider-Verse. So we're going to really dive into so many things today and hopefully flesh this out so we can get to an understanding here. Before we get into it, if you aren't subscribed to the channel, of course, please take the time to do so. We are on the road to 10,000 subscribers. It's going to be a massive giveaway. So if you're just joining for the first time, please subscribe, click the notification bell. I also want to hear your thoughts in the comments below, of course. All right, what we see on screen right now is something that was going around on Instagram. I didn't leave, the handle of who was posting this or whatnot. That's irrelevant. But what we have here are images from Key Collector, and as well as images of CGC slab books, both for Amazing Spider-Man 365 and Spider-Man 2099 #1. So let's look at what we have here, and then I'm going to bring in a lot of data and variables that's going to really etch out what is fact in this situation here, okay? So it is popular opinion right now that Amazing Spider-Man 365, the 30th anniversary issue, is indeed Spider-Man 2099's first appearance. If you look at the CGC slab on the label, it actually states first appearance of Spider-Man 2099. For a closer look, we're going to go ahead and bring up, let's see where we at right here. We're going to bring this up, and you're going to see right here, this is a CGC label. And it says right there, first appearance of Spider-Man 2099. That's it. It talks about the gatefold for Venom Carnage, the poster, and the hologram cover, and all this stuff. But when it comes to Spider-Man 2099, it says it's his first appearance. It doesn't say cameo. It doesn't say full. It doesn't add any other context whatsoever. Now, you can see here that CGC followed suit. Same thing. First appearance, Spider-Man 2099. When it comes to Spider-Man 2099, no context whatsoever, no cameo, no full, no nothing else, just first appearance of Spider-Man 2099. That's it. So let's go back over to this image that we have here. And let's look at right here. This is a Spider-Man 2099 #1 CGC label that just says Origin Spider-Man 2099, and it gives you his name, Miguel O'Hara, right? Let's go down and look at what Key Collector is saying here. For Amazing Spider-Man 365, Key Collector says this: 5-page preview of Spider-Man 2099, considered by some to be the first appearance, but it is an excerpt from Spider-Man 2099 #1. Okay, let's look at what they say for Spider-Man 2099 #1. Right here. First appearance and origin of Spider-Man 2099. And they add some context here saying 5-page preview in Amazing Spider-Man 365 and an advertisement in Web of Spider-Man #90. Obviously, these two, industry leaders, so to say, and you can argue that. Obviously, CGC is an industry leader in graded comics, but Key Collector has made themselves known to be a leader in database and just as a resource in general, regardless if you like them or not or use them or not. So two big entities are seemingly saying two different things. Okay, so obviously the core of the problem here is that The Spider-Man 2099 that shows up in Amazing Spider-Man 365 is indeed a preview, which is just about 5 pages of this story, of the Spider-Man 2099 story. That's why this is murky water right here. Some people want to argue, well, it's just a preview, that therefore it's not a first appearance whatsoever. Other people argue, well, I know it's a preview, but it's in story. It's actually a story within the comic book that makes it a first appearance. Well, how do we get to the bottom of this argument? The biggest thing we have to acknowledge is that there is no concrete standard here. And this is why, for those that watch my channel, you know that I've disagreed with Key Collector in the past, how they label certain things. I still disagree with how they label Mary Jane's first appearance next to her cameos. And there was some question marks on how they label Punisher's second and third appearances and so forth. But there's also issues that I have with CGC and CBCS and other industry entities that label things a way that I disagree with. So how do we get to the bottom of these differences here? We have to understand that there's no concrete, solidified, etched in stone standard. And that's why there continues to be problem. But outside of that, the way that we can come to a decision here is by looking at precedent. Well, what does precedent say? And for those that don't know what precedent means, it means what's come before this, and how have decisions been made, and how have these things been labeled on issues that have came before this that are similar, right? So quite honestly, there's not a lot. There's not a lot. The main thing that we can look at that comes before this are certain things like the Marvel Ages, like the Dark Hawk, or even in this case, Spider-Man 2099. So if you look here, Spider-Man 2099 showed up in Marvel Age 114, a month before Amazing Spider-Man 365, which was the 5-page preview. So some may argue this is the first appearance of Amazing Spider-Man 2099. This is a solicitation book. It is charged. You do pay for it. It was $1 on the stands, but it is a solicitation book. It's basically to show you things to come. It's a solicitation magazine that says, oh, we got these characters coming. We got these issues coming. Very similar to a previews mag. So if you scroll down here and you come to this page, oh, look, who do we have here? Spider-Man 2099, and it talks about 2099 right here. And it talks about the Marvel 2099 universe. So why isn't this the first appearance? Well, because a lot of people will argue, yes, it is a preview, but it's not in story. You don't have storyboards here. You don't have anything actually pulled from a comic book besides this Hembeck comic. But when it comes to 2099, you just have an image and you have the editor, going off telling you a little bit about the character, preparing for you to see him in comics. Now remember, the real buzzword when it comes to first appearances is in comics. We care about first appearances actually in the comic book. So let's go back to Amazing Spider-Man 365. This is in comic book. Now, I've sat on the balance wire here. I've rode the fine line in saying I can understand the murky water here and why this has been called the first appearance of 2099, because this book is not a solicitation. It is a, primary market comic book that you buy off the newsstand, off the rack for a cover price to take home and read. But you can argue that this right down here, you see this at the bottom of the cover. It says a 5-page preview of Spider-Man 2099. Now, if we turn the page and go into the table of contents, it has basically other stories. It has the main story, and it has other smaller stories added into this giant size special. And these are standalone stories. These aren't previews or stories that are pulled for anything else. They are standalone stories that are made specifically for this comic book issue. But then what do we have down here? It says a special preview of Spider-Man 2099. So at heart, being that it's a preview of another book that's going to be sold on the primary market for a cover price in its own story format, is this not still a solicitation, even though it's in a standard newsstand comic book or direct market, however you want to call it, that you buy off the rack? That's the big question. So again, we can see that we're riding a very fine line here. Because by definition and interpretation, you can absolutely argue that this preview and this book is still absolutely 100% a solicitation. Now, let's talk about precedent. We talked about the Marvel age, but let's talk about Marvel previews. An example of some Marvel previews would be for Miles Morales, as he was on the cover of Marvel's previews number 95, and it was again a preview to this character Miles Morales that was going to show up at a later date. But again, people argue that this is merely a solicitation and a preview that is not in story form, as Marvel previews usually, more often than not, do not include sneak peeks and inserts. They will give you storyboards that oftentimes are like black and white, and you see little sneak peeks into the book, but it's the word bubbles aren't there and so forth, and you just mainly get synopsis for all of the books that are to be coming out. But how about Strange Academy? And a book that we're going to use is Miles Morales, number 15. This book right here. As you can see, right here on the cover, it says exclusive Strange Academy preview inside. Now, this book does the exact same thing as Amazing Spider-Man 365. I mean, on the cover of 365, it literally tells you there's a preview of Spider-Man 2099 number 1. Just as right here, it tells you that there is an exclusive preview of Strange Academy. And what does it do? It gives you a few pages of the story that's going to show up, I believe, in Strange Academy number 1, which is their first appearance. So let's see what CGC and CBCS label this book. And here we are. Here you can see it again, exclusive Strange Academy preview. And let's look at this label. All right, we got a Ahmed Story, Javier, or is that Goran? Cover and art. What do we have over here? It gives you the legacy number, Ultimate Spider-Man number 255. I don't see any label for a first appearance of Strange Academy. How interesting, right? None whatsoever. But now we're going to pull up Strange Academy number 1 and look at what CGC says. Look at this. First appearance of Emily Bright, Doyle Dormammu, Shaylee, Moonpetal, Calvin Morrison, and the whole team, folks. CGC is not, and CBCS in this matter, does not recognize precedent whatsoever. It is completely inconsistent, because I'm here to tell you right now, no matter what you believe, you want to call Amazing Spider-Man 365 the first appearance of Spider-Man 2099 Miguel O'Hara, that's fine. That's fine. But if you do that, then you absolutely have to claim Miles Morales 15 to be the first appearance of Strange Academy. And that's not the only book, though, that was released with the preview. So you'd have to go to the release day of each. I think there was 3 books, don't quote me on that have the Strange Academy preview. So which one actually came out first? But all of them predate this book right here. And according to your perception of Amazing Spider-Man 365, that preview should absolutely be the first appearance of Strange Academy. And this book shouldn't have anything. It shouldn't say first appearance of anybody, just like CBCS And CGC do not label Spider-Man 2099 #1 the first appearance of anybody. Lack of consistency here. So you may be asking me, well, Chris, what is Spider-Man 2099's first real appearance or true appearance or whatever words you want to use to describe it? This is much different than a cameo versus full argument. It's much more murky waters. But this is what I know for a simple fact. Context matters. And regardless if you want to put first appearance of some sort on Amazing Spider-Man 365, I would still argue that this book right here is Spider-Man 2099's first full appearance. Now, we usually only use the word full when a cameo precedes it. And again, you could argue that, well, what we saw in Amazing Spider-Man 365 isn't a cameo. It's a preview. But I can argue that it's a cameo by sake of the word. I mean, they cameoed the book, so to say. They cameoed this book right here, so to say. You can argue that. I don't know if it's the best wording to use. You could call Amazing Spider-Man 365 the first cameo appearance of Spider-Man 2099 in preview. Because context matters. Or you could simply still call it first appearance of Spider-Man 2099 in sneak peek preview. And then you could still call this first full appearance of Spider-Man 2099 in story. But at the end of the day, folks, and I'm going to have a lot of you in my comments arguing because you're going to see this differently. But the one thing that you all should see the same and be on the same page about is that these quote-unquote industry leaders are 100% inconsistent. And I actually stand with Key Collector on this. Now, I think Key Collector needs to add more context here with just stating it as first appearance for 2099 #1. But they added more context than anybody, letting everyone know that there was this preview prior. There was this preview prior. And they're even adding context right here on ASM 365 to let you know that there are some people that consider this to be the first appearance, but it is merely an excerpt of Spider-Man 2099 #1. Now, a lot of people say, oh, that's Key Collector's this ASM 365 has been labeled the first appearance for as long as we can remember. And look, CGC is God. Everything CGC says is true. Not the case. Key Collector is just manipulating the market because they have like 200 copies of Amazing Spider. They have nothing better to do, and their app isn't a substantiated business that brings in substantial revenue month to month, that they're just sitting back on a few issues of Spider-Man 2099 and calling it the first appearance so they can manipulate the market, right? That's what they're doing. Obviously, I'm being cynical if you guys aren't aware of that. No. Key Collector isn't stating this because they're trying to manipulate the market and it's been this for so long and they're just sitting on books. They really believe in what they're saying, regardless of if you believe it or not. But again, I stand with them on this. It is murky water to sit here and label Amazing Spider-Man 365 just simply the first appearance without any other context. So now we ask, what does this mean for the market? Well, folks, I always say this. Labels shouldn't dictate the market. We as buyers dictate the market, the supply and the demand. And the demand is based upon us, the buyers and the collectors. That's what dictates the market. We are persuaded by labels, and that's a fact. Labels should be there to assist us in our purchasing decisions, and they should assist us in finding out what we value in these books inherently. What is inherent to the books that makes us value them, to want them in our collection, to put a specific price tag on it, a specific fair market value on it? That shouldn't change. So my answer to all of you, if you feel like seeing this Spider-Man 2099 character for the first time in a 5-page preview in ASM 365 is more important than seeing the actual full book for the first time in Spider-Man 2099 #1, then go ahead and demand ASM 365 more and be willing to pay a little more for that. But if you are somebody who doesn't really care about the preview and you just see it's just a preview, it doesn't count, and you want to look at Amazing Spider-Man 2099, #1 is the important book where you think that, I mean, this is really the first time we see him, this is where it takes off, then put your demand in that book and be willing to pay a little more for that one. That's what it boils down to. What do you want? Don't let the labels dictate you. You all got to stop being so emotionally driven and reactionary according to what other people are dictating. Dictate your own autonomy, folks. If you want both of the books, if you see both of the books as equally important, and the majority of collectors follow suit, then you might see these books have a similar fair market value moving forward. Don't get so caught up in what the label says. At the end of the day, understand that there is no concrete definition of what's going on here. Now, I'll end on this. I still believe we need an oversight committee of some sort. We need concrete standards in the comic book industry to avoid stuff like this. But on this one, I disagree with Key Collector many times. But on this one, I think they're trying to do the right thing and they're giving you context. So if somebody that wasn't educated, and simply wanted to have Spider-Man 2099's important books because they love that character, because they saw him in Into the Spider-Verse movie or something like that. If they're simply looking on a CGC label, they're going to get misled, in my humble opinion, because the context isn't there. Now, they could look at, if you have a CGC slab of 365, they could look at the cover and it'll tell you that it's a preview. But when you look at the label and it just says first appearance of Spider-Man 2099, well, is he in the story as well? Is he in the main story? It's misleading. So at least Key Collector is giving you context to let you know some people see this book as a first appearance, but it's merely a preview pulled from the pages of 2099 #1. With that being said, folks, make your own judgment, make your own decision, but CGC, CBCS, and the grading industry on this one are not consistent whatsoever, and they are contradicting themselves when it comes to labeling these books. I personally value both of them. I think having that 5-page excerpt in 365 is awesome for the collectability of Spider-Man 2099. But I do believe, if I'm speculating on simply Spider-Man 2099, I would take 2099 #1 more so than 365. And don't go sitting here saying, oh, I'm just trying to manipulate it because I'm sitting on copies. I have one copy of Spider-Man 2099 #1. I had 2 others, but I gave them to my kids, and they are beat up badly because they just read them and didn't care. I actually have about at least 3 copies of Amazing Spider-Man 365, at least 3. And I'm saying that I think Spider-Man 2099 #1 is more important to this character than 365 is. So don't sit here and try to create judgment on me, acting like I'm sitting on some books and just trying to freaking pump them up. Because I'm going against my own self-interest if I was interested in selling. So I would love to hear your thoughts below, folks. And again, please subscribe to the channel if you have not done so yet. Thank you so much for watching. Be well, and until next time.